Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes Episode 5 The Man in the Anthill has the hardest job of any of the 5 introductory episodes to date. It has to show us that Ant-Man and Wasp, two characters that you might think are kind of lame and maybe don't really have that much to offer, actually are pretty cool and pretty interesting characters. We have Hank Pym voiced by Wally Wingert, and we have Janet Van Dyne voiced by Colleen O'Shaughnessy. I love both of them as their characters. They both bring really strong personalities, and they both bring really solid performances. This episode is broken up into 3 separate stories that interconnect together. We have Hank Pym in Wakanda versus Ulysses Klaue and Hydra. We have Janet in New York versus Whirlwind, and then we have both of them on the SHIELD helicarrier discussing their futures with Nick Fury and whether or not they even want one at all. And I think that the first fight between Hank and the Hydra agents really showcases just how cool the ability to shrink and change size during a fight can be. Because at first it's just, tiny Hank Pym as Ant-Man is taking on the Hydra agents. That's what it is. But then he shrinks them all down into ant size, and they are just scared, absolutely lifeless. And that, for me, proved that it can be really cool and Ant-Man can be pretty badass. That was a lot of fun to watch, and that really sold me on not just the character, but also on the power set. Janet's fight with Whirlwind shows off her very charismatic, charming personality, and that she is much more interested in being a superhero than Hank Pym is, because that specific story highlights Hank Pym wanting to be more of a scientist, whereas Janet wants to be more of a superhero, and them really disagreeing on that. And that's a fun dynamic to bring to them, especially because they are in a relationship with each other, so it brings just that much more tension to these characters. And finally, seeing them on the SHIELD helicarrier with Nick Fury, and Hank Pym very much calling for criminal rehabilitation, whereas Nick Fury is very much the strong man of, you know what, we need to take these criminals off the streets, and who cares if they're comfortable or not. And that sets up Hank and his pacifism to go further in the series, and eventually we'll get to that as we get into further episodes. And of course, the ending of this episode introduces us to Black Panther, where we see King T'Chaka straight up murdered by M'Baku the Man-Ape, and we get introduced to James Mattis III as T'Challa the Black Panther. We see the origin of him becoming the Black Panther, we see his motives, we see what drives him, and that sets him up for his introduction down the line with the Avengers. Overall, this episode does a great job of introducing us to 3 very pivotal characters for the series, and it's really going to be exciting to see where they go.